taken me a while to get to reviewing Max Payne 3, partly because I wanted to finish it and get some time in on the multiplayer, and partly because the PC version just came out a few weeks ago, and I had to have it on PC. For one, if you've got the machine for it, pretty much anything is better on the PC. And of course, it's nice to have them all in the same system.
Anything less would be uncivilized.
Since I do have them all here, we'll start with the box and compare it to the first two games. Max Payne was just an average box. I have the Game of the Year release, which is almost identical to the original, and it's all per usual. But Max Payne 2 is hands down the best looking game of all time.
Even Daikatana, the second best looking game of all time, looks amateur and garish by comparison.
All joking aside, MP3's box looks okay for a recent PC release. I prefer slimline cases to the thick ones, but it's somewhat justified by needing to contain 4 DVDs. Yeah.
The 4 DVDs translate to a 30GB install, which is just nuts. GTA 4 by comparison was just 15GB. Does that mean Max Payne 3 is twice the game that GTA 4 is? No, don't be ridiculous. By that rubric, Final Fantasy 13 wouldn't have sucked. Another reason it's nice to have them on disc is I would hate to download 30GB through Steam.
The discs all have different art on them, which I like, but they're held in a single CD post thing instead of arranged artfully, which I do not. The manual is also pretty weak, which isn't surprising, just disappointing. But we're not here to look at the box, we're here to look at the game.
I'm a huge fan of the Max Payne games, so I was cautiously optimistic. Optimistic because I love the series and the noir style that so few games seem to have, and because Rockstar have made a lot of great games lately. However, I was cautious because it wasn't made by Remedy, and Sam Lake didn't write it.
I was concerned it would feel too different to be a true sequel, especially since Max Payne 2 closed the book on the Max Payne story. Any sequel they make is really just to make money off of a license they hold, since there's no more story to tell. My prediction was not far off. Max Payne 3 is overall a very solid single-player game, but it has its problems, and the story and storytelling are two of the big ones.
If we make a list of what the Max Payne series is known for, we'd have things like the New York setting, the noir style, bullet time, graphic novel storytelling, and the infamous dream sequences. If we compare that list to Max Payne 3, all we have left is bullet time.
The graphic novel thing is done away with, except for a little cutscene split-screen gimmick here and there, which seems lazily done to me and often covers up the action. There's a little 3-panel kill screen when you die, and that reminds me of the last-gen game 13, instead of graphic novels.
The cutscenes aren't bad, but they're not great. Rockstar is known for its long-winded storytelling, and Max Payne 3 is no exception. There are a ton of cutscenes, often to the detriment of gameplay.
At least they tried to make the style of the cutscenes more interesting than in the GTA 4 trilogy. There are some weird blur, double vision, and digital artifact effects that are probably supposed to visually represent Max's super alcoholic vision mode, but they remind me of Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days, and that game sucked. Though the cutscenes don't suck outright, the writing is a bit off. That's to be expected because it's not Sam Lake writing, but somebody, specifically the guy who wrote the GTA 4 trilogy and Red Dead Redemption, trying to sound like Sam Lake. The hard-boiled narrative style is lost, and the new writing heavily emphasizes words by throwing them on the screen and pulsing the camera with a little visual sting.
Places where yuppies could gawk at the endless spirit of the poor from the inside of their bulletproof buses.
Those same words are probably also written in bold in the script, causing the voice actors to give them extra emphasis.
It sounds weird since Max always had a deadpan delivery appropriate for a hard-boiled narrative.
The graphics are phenomenal, and on a middle-end machine like mine, they still run buttery smooth with DirectX 11. If I had a bit more horsepower, I could probably crank the settings, but I doubt it would make much of a difference. Max Payne 3 looks awesome, and the character models, environments, and effects are hyper-detailed.
When the game begins, Max is no longer on the force, instead working private security for a rich family in Brazil.
He's still an alcoholic, but he's also picked up an addiction to painkillers, which pisses me off. It's not a huge plot point, but it's annoying because it's just based off of a bad joke you and your friends would make in middle school. Oh hey, Max sure takes a lot of those painkillers. He must be addicted. Ha ha ha. Why not end the game with Max taking a mislabeled bottle of painkillers and falling over dead? Come on.
One of the big but not spoilery plot points is that Max quits drinking partway through the game. It seems kinda dumb though because he still uses prescription medication and smokes. When he does quit, he shaves his hair, but not his beard, which, again, dumb.
Rockstar took the bad ending of Max Payne 2 as canon, so Mona Sachs is dead. But Max doesn't seem to be shaken up about it, and he only ever brings it up maybe once in passing.
Instead, he's regressed to the end of Max Payne 1 and the beginning of Max Payne 2, where he drinks and is depressed about his wife and daughter. Even in the bad ending of Max Payne 2, he got over it. The whole point of Max Payne 2 was him coming to terms with Survivor's Guild. Luckily, Ryan McCaffrey returns as the voice and likeness of Max, just about the only link to the original games. Previous events are rarely brought up, and a grand total of 0 recurring characters make an appearance, though that's not too surprising since the supporting cast in the Max Payne series has a prodigious death rate.
Max Payne 3's story makes me want to grab Rockstar by the shirt and yell, "Rockstar, they already made a sequel to Max Payne. It's called Max Payne 2.
I wouldn't mind an entirely new story so much, except they never acknowledge what happened in Max Payne 2 except to pay lip service in 1 or 2 lines.
Hey, I lost loved ones on the street. Alright? Family. More than once.
Max Payne 2 was reduced to a few lines.
I'm well aware they couldn't make a sequel to Max Payne 2 because it would basically just be Mr. and Mrs. Smith. But that's my point. They shouldn't have tried to make a sequel because it means they just have to flatly contradict everything that happened in the previous game.
The other problem I had with the story is a lot like the problem I have with Stalker Clear Sky. Max has no real reason to be there. As soon as everything goes tits up, why does he stick around? The tagline for this game should be, Max is back, and this time, it's not personal. He could and probably should just walk away. I don't care about these people, and I don't know why Max should care about these people, and it makes it so I don't care about the story either. Part of the problem is the setting. It's mostly around Sao Paulo, Brazil, and while I thought I'd enjoy a change of scenery, I really didn't. There are a few flashbacks in the game to New York, and they feel much better. Part of what they've done is remove the noir characters and style. So, Max is Sam Fisher now? The beard, the hair, the age, the angst, the silenced tactical pistol with body armor? Max's character has been changed a lot as well. He's extremely dark, unlike in the first 2 games. Yes, he was wry and often sarcastic, but he didn't spend all of his time complaining. Max was a stoic. That was the style of the game and the style of noir. Now he's just whiny.
Maybe I just haven't found the right guy to put a bullet through my head yet.
You did kill Winterson.
And he somehow got over the death of his wife? I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna let this go. This game has tried to go much darker than the previous 2 games, which is an achievement in and of itself, but it just feels immature. Everybody swears a lot, and Max is a totally different character. It's painfully obvious the game was written by somebody else. It comes across in every line and every part of the story. This isn't a Max Payne game, it's a Rockstar game. There are all the usual Rockstar-styled characters, and of course they shoehorn in dance and clubbing scenes wherever they can. Max spends a pretty large part of the game alongside Passos, his partner who landed in the protection job. Passos has some good lines, but he and Max don't seem to match as characters. There are a few times where their banter is funny.
You want a camel coat, bro?
I'm fine with the leather.
There's plenty here, going begging.
This don't show the blood so much.
But mostly your buddy just serves as an excuse to get Max to Brazil, and then he doesn't do anything for the rest of the game. His character is likable in the usual Rockstar way, but you'll probably hate him anyway because this game has collectibles. Remember in Batman Arkham Asylum where the Joker would come on the PA system every few seconds when you were looking for collectibles? It's a lot like that in Max Payne 3.
Come on, Max!
Collecting clues and golden gun parts is a nice touch, even if the golden guns thing doesn't really make sense in the environment of the game.
Stay with me, Max!
And it adds replayability to the otherwise linear levels.
Let's do this together!
The problem is, the environments are very visually cluttered, so you have to look everywhere for the secrets. While you're looking around, your partner will constantly yell at you to move along.
Stay with me, Max!
He's not the only annoying character either. Max will frequently remind you where you need to go, and there are a good 2 or 3 more characters Max protects throughout.
The servers are this way.
When you're with another character, which is often, they whine and talk and whine and constantly tell you to hurry up.
Hey, Max, come to me!
Overall, the story is very disappointing to me. As a standalone story, it works well enough, but as a piece of the Max Payne series, I don't like it. But if I wasn't such a huge fan of the series, I probably wouldn't care.
I'm happy to say that at least the gameplay is good. The gameplay style has been changed. Instead of being a run-and-gun game, almost a kind of third-person bullet hell like the first 2 were, it's now a console-friendly cover-based shooter. Rockstar have taken a game all about free-flowing action and turned it into a very stationary shooter, which I'm not sure I like. The levels are insanely detailed and have a lot of little destructible bits, but the openness and hidden areas of the first 2 games have been sacrificed for a more console-friendly linearity. Almost every fight feels like a turret match since you start each fight in a piece of cover and are clearly not expected to move. There are even some gameplay segments where you can't move, like defending a location or even more obnoxiously rail shooting segments.
Because what Max Payne needed all along was not one, but multiple rail shooting levels. Yes, that's what was missing from the first 2 games.
The trial and error difficulty of the first 2 games has been retained, something which I like.
Most of the fun of the game is figuring out what crazy moves you can get away with.
However, the first 2 games' Save Anywhere system has been replaced with a much more console-friendly checkpoint system, so you'll get to try entire sections over and over instead of just individual encounters.
Most parts of the game are just flat out hard, and not in a good way. Once you've gotten past the trial and error portion, there's still a solid hour of just error where you get shafted by all of the game's myriad flaws.
For one, every time you enter a cutscene segment, Max puts away his gun and uses a pistol so they didn't have to animate it differently. That would be fine, except that cutscenes often end with gunfights. Usually they put you right in the thick of things, which will get you killed a few times. Because Max uses a pistol in cutscenes, you might put away a fully loaded assault rifle and pull out an empty pistol, getting you killed repeatedly once the action starts while you frantically try to relocate and pull out a gun. Or worse, occasionally between cutscenes, Max loses his rifle. Sometimes it's for legit reasons, sometimes it just disappears, leading you to believe that Max chucked a fully loaded assault rifle in favor of his empty sidearm. You'll also get killed by the game engine more than a few times. The rage engine used in GTA 4 and Red Dead Redemption is put to fantastic use here, and the soft body physics have been augmented with awesome blood and bullet impact effects. Max's movement looks very fluid, and he'll transition smoothly between multiple stances while still able to aim and fire, but it is a bit floaty. The momentum-based movement physics look good and work fine in an open-world game like GTA 4, but not so in a linear corridor shooter like this. You'll get killed when Max hangs up on doors or small bits of the environment, or when he starts moving in the wrong direction because he has to turn his legs around. Max interacts with the world while shoot dodging, which is pretty nice. However, it has its issues. Sometimes you'll get hung up on objects, and sometimes you'll barely clip an object while just starting your dodge, and Max will collapse into ragdoll on the floor, getting you killed. Spazzy Ragdoll is a comedy goldmine, but the joke is lost when it gets you killed. Most of the replayability in this game will probably come from the crazy fun you can have while shoot dodging, sliding down stairs like a toboggan, or hurling yourself through plate glass. A new feature has been added that lets Max automatically use an available painkiller when critically injured to initiate Last Man Standing mode, where you have to shoot the guy who shot you before you hit the ground. It's a nice and sort of cool feature that can bail you out if you make a mistake and forget to use a painkiller, or if you get fucked over because Max has to actually animate using the painkiller, which he refuses to do while performing other actions. However, it happens way too much whenever you try to do fun stuff because of how accurate and damaging enemies are. They can score one-hit kill headshots on you, which is super unfair in a single-player game, especially a cover-based shooter where you sort of need a grace period of health or shields or enemy inaccuracy in order to pop out and shoot people. The soundtrack isn't my cup of tea, but it's not bad, just forgettable. Mostly you won't really notice it's there, except on a few levels with standout tunes. Strangely, it sounds a lot like the Marathon soundtrack. There's also an official theme tune like Max Payne 2's Late Goodbye by Poets of the Fall, but that track is just used as any other piece of music in the game, as opposed to being an in-universe song like Late Goodbye was in Max Payne 2.
The guns, at least, are great, and there is an awesome variety.
In a cool touch, the Beretta 92FS that's been Max's mainstay since day one has been replaced with a Taurus PT92, which is actually a Brazilian knockoff manufactured in some of Beretta's old factories in Brazil. The Taurus PT92 was actually used in a lot of John Woo movies because it was easier to get a hold of than the actual Beretta. One issue I have with the guns is the way they're made available. You have a limited 3-weapon arsenal, which doesn't carry over between missions, so weapons are only available on the levels you find them in, and most levels don't have more than 3 or 4 different weapons. It's cool to start a new level and find new guns, but I'd still like older guns to be available in later levels. Instead of holding all the hardware at once, you're restricted to a much more console-friendly 3, but now you can see what you're carrying on Max. You have 2 one-handed holsters and can hold a rifle. Like in Hitman, you can use a single handgun while holding a rifle in your offhand, but if you want to dual wield, you can't hold a rifle at all. Slings and straps do not exist in the Max Payne universe. There are also no grenades except in multiplayer. The first 2 games had grenades and Molotovs, which are still frequently wielded by enemies in the single player, but Max doesn't get any, which is kind of unfair. Though their inclusion in multiplayer leads to nade spam abuse, so I think Rockstar got it backwards. Also, the weapon and ammo restriction starts to be a problem in the later game in harder difficulties, where you might run out of ammo in a fight and be dead meat. Enemies take a ludicrous number of bullets to down on higher difficulties and late in the game, and have armor on most parts of their body. When you run out of ammo, you don't use a melee attack like in the first 2 games, since Max only has an automatically triggered cinematic melee attack that strangely requires you to still use a bullet or 2. These little kill cinematics are cool, but they're hardly useful because of the potency of the game's enemies, and they're not varied at all, like, for example, in the Punisher game.
Overall, though, the gameplay is solid. I don't exactly agree with the changes they've made to the gameplay, but it's still very enjoyable, enough so that you'll be constantly wishing for more action.
The game is about 8 to 10 hours long, less if you play a lesser difficulty, and most of it feels like cutscenes. This is particularly aggravating if you want to replay the game or parts of it, since the cutscenes aren't quite skippable. In order to enjoy the action, you have to sit through tons of cutscenes, which really aren't good enough for a repeat viewing. The arcade and New York Minute score attack modes are alright, but I just prefer the actual game to have less sluggish story progression and more action. What's worse is that even in actual gameplay, the game constantly takes control away from you to show you some small inconsequential thing that really doesn't warrant a cutscene break. It's annoying and makes it feel like there's even less gameplay than there is.
Far too much of the game is shown in cutscenes, and I do wish they would have made you, the player, do more things instead of having Max do everything for you. The multiplayer component should be the place to get your fill of action, but it's a mixed bag. Mostly it feels like a dry run for whatever they plan to do with GTA 5.
There's a cool but half-baked new game mode called Gang Wars, but overall the multiplayer is really not ready for prime time, at least on PC. Christ. Wow, my camera just went insane.
God, this is laggy as hell.
Fuck, well at least you made it into the game.
Really?
There are extreme connection issues, and I have had a ludicrous amount of difficulty even playing. Oh my fucking god. Connecting to matches is a crapshoot, and after repeatedly being dropped from the match before it even starts, the matchmaker will give up and start placing you in matches by yourself, which nobody will ever join. About this game you made, nobody seems to own it but me. All I need is 3 more players, which is about 2 more than exist. When you do finally make it into the game, there is crippling lag and rampant hacking because instead of central servers, everything is peer-to-peer, making latency a big issue and giving hackers relatively free reign, even with a meager banning system in place. I think he's getting experience for repeatedly triggering his bullet time like that.
Connecting with other players through Rockstar Social Club is awful and makes me wish I was using anything else, like Xbox Live or even Battlelog.
If you do manage to play the game, it's a decent amount of fun. The unlock progression is bog standard for multiplayer games recently, but it seems to be horribly balanced. The more gear you carry, the heavier your weight class is, affecting health and stamina regeneration as well as movement speed. But as you rank up, you unlock a higher carry weight threshold for each weight class, and weapon mods that reduce their weight. The result is that higher level players are kitted out impossibly well, and the higher level weapons are actually demonstrably better than lower level weapons. Battlefield 3 this ain't, and higher ranked players have a double leg up on newbies.
There are also some obnoxious oddities that make the gameplay style a bit stilted. Even worse, there are sniper rifles that get one-hit kills to any part of the body regardless of armor, which is inexcusable. I thought we learned that over a decade ago from Counter-Strike, but apparently not. There's also the way the third-person camera is handled. Like in GTA 4, your bullets leave the center of the screen instead of your actual gun, so you can maneuver yourself to basically shoot through walls.
It's a silly little exploit in single player, but in multiplayer it means you get shot by people who just don't exist. Hilariously, laser sights still come out of the gun, so they're totally off target and ruin your accuracy. More patches will hopefully make the multiplayer a decent way to spend some time, but it's not quite there yet.
What Rockstar have done with Max Payne 3 is take a series all about fluid movement and run and gunning action and replace it with mostly static Pop-Tart based gameplay. The game would be a lot more fun if it had a focus on John Woo style acrobatics and movement, just like the first 2 did.
Just like how GTA 4 was a lot less impressive because of Saints Row coming out before it, Max Payne 3 seems less impressive because John Woo's Stranglehold came out a few years ago. Stranglehold added a lot of great movement and fluidity to the bullet time combat, and I think some of that would be nice here. Shoot dodges really don't feel right with the cover-based Pop-Tart gameplay.
It's pretty good. There's a lot of cutscenes, and it would be nice to be able to skip them and just jump right into the action. But they're made pretty well, and I think it's overall enjoyable.
I give Max Payne 3 for the PC a 7 out of 10. It's a solid game. I can't excuse the issues I had with the story, but I found it easy enough to look past them and just have a good time while playing the game.
If you like Rockstar games, this won't disappoint, and it's a blend of GTA 4 style story with Red Dead style mechanics.
I would recommend Max Payne 3, but cautiously. Not for the multiplayer, at least not yet, but definitely for the single player, which I had a lot of fun with.
So I guess it was what they wanted it to be. A console-friendly cover-based shooter. A linear romp about putting detailed, gruesome holes in bad guys at a pace that would make a snail stand a little taller. Well, that's what they had paid for, so in the end, that's what they got. Say what you want about Rockstar, but they understand capitalism. You buy yourself a game, and you get what you pay for, or slightly less. At $60 in less than 6 hours of actual gameplay, they must have thought the fans wouldn't know the difference. Here I was, about to review this poor bastard like some 12-year-old on GameFAQs, and I realized they were correct. I wouldn't know good from bad if one of them was a respectful sequel, and the other was a bullet time mod for GTA 4.